The room breathed like a sleeping animal, and Avery felt the floor hum. The candle flame stretched thin, cold, and white. A hook caught in Avery's chest. Fear said run. Longing said stay. Avery Cole said, "If anyone hears me, don't look away." The air grew dense with a metal taste. Wood creaked without footsteps. On the wall, shadows moved against the light, as if the light had learned to doubt itself. Avery's goal was simple and hard: tell the truth or stay broken. Pastor Miriam's last lesson echoed like soft bells. Dr. Grant's logic snagged like a nail. Ruth's mercy warmed a corner of memory. The silver herald stood within the blaze, tall and shifting, edges bright like poured silver. It did not speak with a mouth. It pressed a sentence into Avery's ribs. The sentence said, "You have been seen." Avery swayed, steady and trembling at once. Mr. Vale's smile flickered in the window glass, thin as a crack. The flame bent toward Avery, asking. Avery whispered, "What must I give?" The white light leaned closer, and the door latch turned. Morning carried a thin calm, but Avery felt the hum under the floorboards, like a memory of thunder. Steam rose from the mug and made a small cloud. Avery Cole said, "I need to know if I imagined it." The room smelled like rain and metal. The window kept a faint silver film, as if the night had signed its name. Pastor Miriam would say, "Start with breath." Avery counted to 4, but the fourth count quivered. Dr. Grant would ask for data. The data was a mark on the ribs and a voice without air. Ruth would call it mercy knocking. Avery wanted mercy and feared the price. A bird tapped the sill twice, then flew. The journal lay open to a blank page that did not feel blank. The flame memory warmed the skin. Avery said, "Show me what to do." The kettle clicked like a tiny bell. The light shifted on the wall, slow and deliberate, as if something stood just outside the frame and waited for Avery to step closer. The church office smelled like paper, lemon oil, and old wood. Pastor Miriam listened without rushing the silence. Avery Cole said, "It told me I was seen." Pastor Miriam's hands folded like a shelter. She said, "Seen is not hunted. Seen is held." The words landed like warm stones in cold water. A clock tick braided with the hum in Avery's bones. Avery feared the cost of truth and the weight of hiding. The goal was to walk forward without lying to the soul. Pastor Miriam said, "Write it down. Speak it when ready." The silver memory tingled under Avery's sternum. In the hall, a door sighed as if the building breathed. The light through stained glass made soft rivers on the carpet. Avery said, "What if it asks too much?" The room answered with a low, settling sound, not threat, not comfort. Pastor Miriam met Avery's eyes and did not blink, and the silence asked the same question back. The clinic smelled like alcohol swabs and quiet. Dr. Grant clicked his recorder and frowned when it lagged. Avery Cole said, "I don't want drugs to erase the message." "Dr." Lucas Grant said, "We measure first." He kept his tone flat, but his thumb trembled on the button. The monitor showed clean heart waves until the room fell still. Then the lines rose in even steps, as if keeping time with a song no one heard. Avery remembered the white flame kissing the air. The taste of metal returned like a thin coin on the tongue. Dr. Grant said, "Stress can mimic awe." Avery said, "Awe can mimic stress." The clock on the wall stopped for a breath and then lurched forward. A single fluorescent tube buzzed in a low key. Avery wanted proof and feared it. Dr. Grant leaned closer, curious against caution. The screen flickered, and a pale band of static drew a single word shape Avery could not read. Dusk found Avery on the porch with Ruth's scarf around the neck. The air smelled like wet cedar. Ruth Morales said, I once begged the dark to leave me alone. Her voice carried a tired music. Avery Cole said, Did it listen? Ruth looked past the street lamps. She said, No. Mercy did. The quiet held that line like a lantern. A car passed, tires singing on damp asphalt. Avery felt the wound and the want sit side by side. The goal was to stop running from the voice and also not drown in it. Ruth said, Tell the truth to someone who stays. Avery thought of the door latch turning. The sky kept a last band of violet. Somewhere, a wind chime shook one note and stilled. Ruth said, You're not broken beyond repair. Avery wanted to believe and feared the day the cost would come due. A shadow crossed the far window again, soft as a breath, and did not explain itself. Sirens bled into the wet morning, and Avery ran. The alley smelled like rain and old iron. A dumpster thudded as if something inside turned over to watch. Avery Cole said, Leave me if you're real. Prove it if you care. The silver herald brightened in a window's reflection, and then thinned to a line. Dr. Lucas Grant called, Stop and breathe. But fear outran reason. Footsteps echoed that did not match Avery's stride. Mr. Vale's voice slid from a fire escape, soft and near. Mr. Vale said, Truth can wait. Pain can't. Avery's chest burned with a hot ache and a cold ring around the ribs. Tires hissed on the avenue. A shutter banged like a warning drum. Avery wanted the voice and hated the pull. A neon cross across the street flickered and steadied. The hum under the skin rose to a tone. Avery said, Show me the path. The tone shifted a half step, and a back door unlatched as if the sound had a hand. Inside the back room of a closed bakery, the world exhaled. Flour scent softened the edges. Avery's hands shook sugar from a counter and watched it fall like slow snow. Ruth Morales said, Sit 1 minute. Her voice made space. Avery Cole said, I think it wants me to follow sound. Ruth wiped a mug and set it down like an oath. She said, Follow what keeps you honest. The oven ticked from cooling metal. Dr. Lucas Grant texted 3 words, I found something, and then nothing more. Avery's breath evened but kept a tremor, a skipped beat that would not decide. Ruth said, When I ran in circles. Avery said, When I stay, everything shakes. A paper bag deflated with a soft sigh in the quiet room. In the flour dust, a thin oval of light formed and held like a promise or a trap. Ruth touched Avery's arm and did not speak. The light widened by a finger width and waited. The power dimmed with a single low throb. The oval of light sharpened into a door shape on the floor. Mr. Vale stepped from the threshold without moving his feet, as if the room slid to meet him. Mr. Vale said, You asked for path. I am shortcut. His suit held no rein, no lint, no doubt. Control sat on his shoulders like a tailored weight. Avery Cole said, You don't belong to light. Mr. Vale smiled, narrow and precise. He said, I belong to the part of you that keeps secrets alive. The oven clock froze on 9:17. Dr. Lucas Grant's name lit Avery's phone and died before a ring. Mr. Vale's eyes did not blink. He said, Tell nothing, and I give quiet. The thin blue glow on the tiles tightened to a leash. Ruth stepped in front of Avery and breathed slow. Mr. Vale lowered his chin like a judge about to speak. His voice fell 1 note deeper, and the room obeyed. The church nave held a hush like a held breath. Pastor Miriam walked the aisle with a small candle and stopped when the flame leaned east. Pastor Miriam Hale said, You're not hunted, you're invited to heal. Avery Cole said, "It hurts like being found at a crime I forgot." Pastor Miriam set the candle on the rail. She said, "Confession is not performance. It is return." The stained glass poured soft rivers over the pews. Ruth Morales said, "He offered quiet for silence." Pastor Miriam answered, "Quiet from him is emptiness." The word emptiness felt colder than the rain. Dr. Lucas Grant slipped into a back pew, eyes rimmed with wake. He said, "There's a tone under your breath pattern." Pastor Miriam did not flinch at the science. She said, "Follow what rings true and costs you nothing you must keep." Avery swallowed a hard knot of pride. The candle leaned again. The lean pointed toward the old side door. Wind rose outside, a long, steady note. Avery gripped the rail and felt the tone settle in the bones like a compass. Avery Cole said, "I'm done bargaining." Pastor Miriam nodded once, a blessing without words. Dr. Lucas Grant said, "Then we test where it leads." He held the recorder like a fragile promise. Ruth Morales said, "If it breaks you, we will hold the pieces." The side door groaned and bared a narrow stair. The air smelled like dust and old varnish. The tone climbed a half step as if calling a name. Avery's fear shook, then folded into resolve that tasted like copper and clean water. The candle flame shortened and steadied. Avery said, "I choose the light even if it shatters me." The stair took that line and gave it back as echo. Dr. Grant's thumb hovered, then pressed record. The last note rose from below, clear as a bell struck once, and the group stepped down into the hum. The basement hallway felt safe at first, all paint, peel, and soft echoes. A small lab door stood open with a gentle hum inside. Dr. Lucas Grant said, "I set up controlled monitoring, no needles." His smile was thin but kind. Ruth Morales checked the corners. Avery Cole said, "It feels calm, too calm." The lights buzzed in an even key. A cart held headbands and sensors like harmless toys. The Silver Herald was nowhere, only its absence crisp as frost. A clipboard bore Avery's name already written in neat letters. Dr. Grant said, "Just sit and breathe." Avery sat and watched the screen glow a quiet green. A printer breathed out a blank page, then another. Pastor Miriam's candle pooled a soft halo on the floor. A draft slid under the door with a metallic taste. Avery said, "Who else knows we're here?" Dr. Grant looked away for half a breath. The hum steadied, and the calm felt padded. Electrodes kissed Avery's temples, light as moth wings. Dr. Lucas Grant said, "Well, listen together." His voice softened, honest around the edges. Avery Cole said, "If I run, stop me." Ruth Morales took Avery's hand and squeezed once. Pastor Miriam whispered a prayer with no words, only breath. The tone returned like a tide under skin. On the screen, waves rose into clean steps. Dr. Grant said, "Stay with it." Trust uncurled a little, not loud, just a small warm thread. The room seemed to widen and then return. A loose wire sparked one blue blink and died. Dr. Grant's thumb hovered over send on a hidden window, then drifted away. He said, "You're safe." Avery believed for 5 heartbeats and counted them. The printer clicked again and held. A distant door shut with a solid hand. The thread of trust held but trembled. The screen flashed a mirror graph in reverse, as if the room watched Avery back. Mr. Vale's voice came through the intercom with no origin. Mr. Vale said, "See how easy it is to draw lines and call them truth." Avery Cole said, "You're not invited." The intercom answered with a low laugh. Mr. Vale said, "I am your neat letter on the clipboard. I am the tidy story that hides the wound." Pastor Miriam lifted the candle, Flame steady and small, Ruth Morales said. He wants silence dressed as care. Dr. Lucas Grant swallowed and did not speak. Control moved in the air like a cold breeze that chose where to touch. The tone bent under pressure and then returned. Mr. Vale said, "Let me make it quiet forever." The question hung in the hum and pressed on Avery's chest. A lock clicked on the lab door. Dr. Lucas Grant's eyes flickered with apology and fear. Dr. Lucas Grant said, "I had to notify the board. They can help." The lights brightened to clinical white. Avery Cole said, "You promised no needles." A hidden panel opened with soft arms for restraints. Dr. Grant reached to shut it, but too late. Two straps slid out and held. Ruth Morales shouted, "Stop!" Pastor Miriam's candle guttered and then fought back to life. Dr. Grant said, "I'm trying to keep you safe." The words cut like clean glass. Mr. Vale's voice purred, content with the trap. Avery's heart slammed once, twice, then found the tone beneath panic. Avery said, "I will not trade my voice for your comfort." The straps tightened a breath and paused. Dr. Grant's hand shook over the release and did not press. Silence arrived like a verdict and then cracked. The silver herald rose from the candle's breath, not from the bulb. Light poured along the straps and softened them to slack. Pastor Miriam exhaled one held prayer. Ruth Morales said, "Stand now." Avery Cole stood, shaking but standing. Dr. Lucas Grant said, "I was wrong," and could not look up. Mr. Vale hissed through the intercom and then smiled in the reflection. Thinner than before, the hum in the bones turned into a clear line pointing somewhere older than the lab. Avery said, "The door under the stair." The group listened, and the floor listened back. The printer finally woke and printed one word in pale ink, "Return." Avery looked at the word and did not flinch. Fear stayed, but it stopped steering. The herald dimmed to a trace on the wall. The choice pulled them toward the locked room. Silence settled after the lab door opened, a hush like dust floating in a sunbeam. The air felt thin and honest. The candle on the cart made a tiny sound as wax shifted. Avery Cole said, "He meant well and still hurt me." The words hung like damp cloth. Dr. Lucas Grant stood apart, shame making him small. Ruth Morales stayed close without touching. Pastor Miriam Hale listened and let the quiet work. The floor hum faded to a memory. The screen's glow died to gray. Avery traced the word "return" on the printout and felt a door inside move. Pastor Miriam said, "Begin again with truth." The room smelled like hot metal cooling. Avery closed his eyes and saw the white flame, but softer now, like breath in winter. He opened them to a shadow on the wall that did not match any body. Avery said that shape was there before the candle. The shadow leaned, and a seam showed. The seam opened in Avery's mind before it opened in the wall. The smell of wine and chalk floors returned. A classroom light hummed. A young voice from memory said, "I didn't do it," and Avery watched himself choose silence. He remembered the friend who took the blame because Avery feared the cost. Avery Cole said, "I left him alone with the wrong story." The present and past braided like two threads pulled tight. Ruth Morales said, "Shame grows roots when we feed it names." The silver herald stood behind the memory like a lamp behind a curtain. Pastor Miriam Hale said, "Speak it plain, Dr. Lucas Grant whispered, "What was the choice?" Avery felt the metal taste, the same as tonight. He had turned away then. He faced it now. Avery said, "I lied to keep my place." The old bell rang in the mind, and the hallway emptied. The seam in the wall brightened and waited. Avery faced the lit seam and the quiet behind it. Heartbeat counted the moments. Breath thickened and then cleared. The wall thinned to a mirror that showed not a face but a posture of hiding. Avery Cole said, I'm done with this shape. The silver herald stepped from the light and did not tower. It stood at eye height and waited. Pastor Miriam Hale said, "Tell him by name." Mr. Val's reflection drifted over the glass like smoke. Mr. Vale said, "You needed me. I kept you safe." The words were soft and clean. Avery felt a tremor and did not move away. Ruth Morales said, "He is a promise of quiet without healing." Dr. Lucas Grant swallowed and said nothing. Avery said, "You are my fear of losing love." The mirror took the line and brightened. The room held still. The shape in the glass lost detail. Something truer pressed through. Mr. Vale set his suit straight inside the glass and smiled like a rule written in ink. Mr. Vale said, "I am the part of you that trades truth for belonging. I protect the seat, the title, the nod." His tone was patient and proud. Avery Cole said, "You look like control, but you are fear." Mr. Vale said, "Fear preserves, confession destroys." Pastor Miriam Hale said, "Love survives truth." Dr. Lucas Grant said, "I chose approval over care." Ruth Morales said, "I chose silence once. It cost me years." The mirror brightened and darkened with each line like a lung. Mr. Vale said, "Pick me, and you will never feel the knife of being seen." The offer glowed. The edges went soft. The room's light thinned as if pulled into his pocket. Avery felt the pull and named it. The pull eased. A quieter light waited underneath. Avery let the promise of easy quiet pass like a tide that fails to reach the shore. The body shook and steadied. The breath felt clean, then heavy, then clean again. Avery Cole said, "So this was the truth all along." Pastor Miriam Hale closed her eyes and nodded once. Ruth Morales smiled with tears that did not fall. Dr. Lucas Grant lowered his head and said, "I will answer for my part." The silver herald raised a hand and the mirror turned back to wall. The seam sealed like a healed cut. The hallway light warmed from blue to morning gold. Avery said, "I accept what I did and what I will do now." The tone beneath the floor returned as a guide, not a chain. The group faced the stair that led deeper. The quiet did not feel empty anymore. It felt ready. The next door waited where the church met the old foundations. Footsteps echoed from the old foundations, measured and slow. Air cooled like the start of a storm. Dust stirred without wind. Avery Cole said, "It's close." Pastor Miriam Hale said, "Hold your breath steady." Dr. Lucas Grant counted under his breath and failed at 4. Ruth Morales said, "We go together." The stair turned and tightened, the rails slick with varnish worn thin by years. A bulb flickered, then steadied, then dimmed. The hum under the floor rose to a narrow wire of sound. Avery tasted metal and prayer. The silver herald walked beside him. No taller, no louder, only present. Mr. Vale's voice spoke from the dark, smooth and near. Mr. Vale's voice spoke from the dark. "Smooth and near." "Vale," said, "one more step and you owe me." The tone bent like a bowstring. Avery said, "Not this time." The bulb went out. The sound did not. The last riser met their feet, and a heavy door stood waiting. The door opened to a vaulted room of brick and echoes. A shallow pool lay in the center like a fallen mirror. Mr. Vale stood at the far arch, hands open as if offering peace. Mr. Vale said, "Lay down the story, and I grant rest." Avery Cole said, "Rest without truth is sleep that never heals." Dr. Lucas Grant said, "Data is clean, motive is not." Pastor Miriam Hale said, "Name what you most fear." The silver herald faced Mr. Vale and did not cast a shadow. Ruth Morales said, I fear leaving someone alone again. The hum surged, cutting the space into two lives, before and after. Mr. Vale said, truth will take your belonging. Avery stepped to the pool and saw his face and the shape of hiding behind it. He did not look away. Mr. Vale lifted his chin, and the room tilted toward him. The room tightened like a throat. Cables in the walls hummed though no power fed them. Mr. Vale said, choose me and keep your circle. Ruth Morales stepped forward first. Ruth Morales said, I will not let him choose alone. The ground shook. A brick fell and split near her heel. Pastor Miriam Hale moved between the tremor and the others, body a small wall. The silver herald lifted a hand, and light caught falling dust and slowed it. Dr. Lucas Grant said, I made the first trap. I'll stand in its path. He stepped to Avery's side and raised nothing but his empty hands. Avery Cole said, I will not trade another life for my comfort. The pool darkened. A narrow crack opened along the floor, a warning line. The cost was clear. The circle held. Mr. Vale drew the darkness to himself like a coat. The pool turned black glass. He said, belonging or truth. Pick. The words cracked like ice. Avery Cole stepped onto the first stone in the water. The tone climbed and drilled through fear. Pastor Miriam Hale said, stand and breathe. The silver herald's light steadied and did not blind. Dr. Lucas Grant said, if he falls, I go in. Ruth Morales said, if he rises, I am here. Mr. Vale smiled and raised a hand. A shadow reached for Avery's throat and met air. Avery said, I am seen, and I confess. The word confess rang like a bell. The black glass shattered to clear water. Mr. Vale's coat of dark slipped from his shoulders and hit the floor with no sound. The room took a breath. Silence returned, not empty but full. Water settled into soft rings. Avery Cole stood on the last stone and breathed easy. Pastor Miriam Hale closed her eyes and smiled without teeth. Ruth Morales laughed once, quiet and bright, then wiped her face. Dr. Lucas Grant said, it broke and did not break you. The silver herald lowered its hand and became a pale trace on brick. Mr. Vale stood thinner, less certain, as if light had taken his edges. Avery said, I choose truth, even when it costs. The room relaxed around the line. The hum under the floor changed from warning to welcome. A narrow passage opened behind the pool, old wood and older air. The echo that answered sounded like morning. The choice pointed forward, and so did they. Smoke thinned to threads, and the chamber breathed like a tired lung. Water rings softened and went still. No one spoke. Boots ticked faint grit on stone. Avery Cole tasted air that was only air. Ruth Morales rubbed the heel of her hand across her brow and let it fall. Pastor Miriam Hale held the candle low until its flame steadied. Dr. Lucas Grant leaned on the arch and listened to the quiet. The silver herald stood like a pale seam on brick. Mr. Vale's outline had lost its edges and would not form again. Avery said, it's over, and the word did not echo. The hush felt wide, not empty. The truth sat between them and did not move. In that stillness, Avery counted the cost with calm fingers and found it real. The old need to hide had gone out like a light. The belonging it bought was gone with it. Avery marked that loss and did not reach for it. They climbed in slow steps, each tread softer than the last. Avery held the rail and listened to the heart settle. A door in the memory opened and shut, small and clean. Chalk dust rose from a long-ago hall. A friend's eyes waited there, kind and hurt. Avery Cole said, I see you now, and the words were barely sound. Ruth Morales breathed out, and it sounded like release. Pastor Miriam Hale said nothing and let the stair carry them. Dr. Lucas Grant's shoes scuffed in a steady pattern, penitent and plain. The Silver Herald kept pace, no more than a hum in the air. Avery pictured the lie, the seat saved, the nod taken, and felt the shape of it grow thin. Guilt and relief took turns and did not fight. The church door opened to morning. Somewhere a bell tested one note. Life did not rush to greet them. It waited and made room for a different walk. In the nave, time slowed until breath became the only clock. Dr. Lucas Grant stood apart with sleeves pushed back and hands unsteady. He said, "I hurt you when I wanted to help." The words were small and exact. Avery Cole met his eyes and held them. Ruth Morales watched like a sentry whose work was care. Pastor Miriam Hale waited at the rail where light pooled. The Silver Herald glimmered near the candle and did not speak. Avery said, "I forgive you." The line fell into the floor and settled there. Dr. Grant's shoulders dropped, as if a quiet weight had found a place to rest. He said, "I will learn to listen." The room agreed with a soft timber crack. Avery felt the old story loosen without breaking the new one. A still answer moved through them, not loud, not weak. Forgiveness did its slow work where anyone could see. Pastor Miriam Hale opened a drawer and brought out a small card, edges rounded by years. She read, "Truth is a door that opens toward you." The line felt older than the building. Avery Cole heard the steps that brought him here and saw where they had bent. Ruth Morales smiled the way a person does when a map matches the road. Dr. Lucas Grant stood near and did not touch the card, as if it were a live wire of mercy. The Silver Herald brightened and dimmed with the candle's breath. Pastor Miriam said, "You are not the wound you hid. You are the one who opened the door." The nave gathered that sentence like rain in a clean barrel. Avery's mouth trembled and then found a small smile he did not force. A bell outside counted slow. The card went back to its place, but the line stayed in the air like light. Avery set the journal on the rail and wrote one line, "I will tell the truth where it costs and where it heals." The pen paused, then lifted. Ruth Morales tied her scarf around the journal like a promise. Pastor Miriam Hale said, "Go make it right." Dr. Lucas Grant said, "I will walk with you, and I will wait when I should." The Silver Herald's glow thinned to sunlight on wood. Avery Cole closed the book and stood. The air felt simple. Outside, the day had taken its full color. He said, "I will knock on the door I left behind." The words made a path in front of his shoes. The nave did not hold him back. It blessed and released. The last candle burned straight and small. Avery breathed in the quiet and stepped toward the exit that led to the street and the hall. Stillness greeted them on the steps, a city pausing between breaths. Pigeons shifted and settled on the wire. A bus sighed 2 streets away. Avery Cole felt the right kind of quiet inside the ribs. Ruth Morales stood with hands in pockets, soft eyes on the morning. Pastor Miriam Hale looked at the sky the way one reads a verse. Dr. Lucas Grant tucked his recorder away, not from fear, but choice. The Silver Herald rested in the play of light on the window pane. Avery said, "We lose the lies, and something else goes with them." The truth did not argue. It stood like a friend who would wait. A breeze lifted one page edge of the journal and let it fall. The steps held their warmth from the new sun. The silence asked a question and did not need an answer. Was it worth it? Waited in the air like a bell that keeps ringing after sound. They walked. Shoes clicked, then softened on a block of old brick. Avery Cole led without rushing. Ruth Morales kept a half step behind, guard and friend. Pastor Miriam Hale moved at a steady parish pace, unhurried and sure. Dr. Lucas Grant matched the rhythm and did not narrate it. The street woke with coffee steam and the squeak of a sign turned to open. A leaf skated the curb and rested. Avery said, "I will knock and not explain the weather." The line was plain and brave. The body remembered the door, the weight, the hinge. The memory did not bite. It breathed. A window on the route showed their shape stretched long and then right-sized. The corner turned and the address drew near. The morning made room for the step that mattered more than the rest. On the porch of a small walk-up, Avery read the letter he had carried in the mind for years. The paper spoke without ink. A voice rose like a recording left in a drawer. It said, "I waited for you to say it." The sound was not bitter. It was tired and kind. Ruth Morales looked down to give the moment privacy. Pastor Miriam Hale set her hand on the rail and kept still. Dr. Lucas Grant faced the street and stood guard against noise. The Silver Herald traced a thin band of light across the door. Avery Cole said, "I was wrong, and I am here." The porch boards answered with a dry sigh. Time stretched and then found its measure again. The theme of the whole journey gathered in one breath and held, seen and seeing, known and telling. The door listened more than it stood. Days turned without drama. The church lights came on and went off. The city kept its weather and its small mercies. Avery Cole worked and wrote and spoke when it cost and when it healed. Ruth Morales laughed more often and slept all night sometimes. Pastor Miriam Hale taught the line on the card to anyone who asked for a map. Dr. Lucas Grant set new rules for his practice and taped "Listen" first on the wall. The Silver Herald lived in ordinary light and did not demand awe. Morning found them and let them pass. No fanfare, no choir, just breath that did not break. The world did not become simple. It became honest enough to hold. At dusk, Avery returned to the nave alone. The last candle burned short and sure. The pew wood held a day's heat. Air tasted like dust and sun. Avery Cole said, "You have been seen," and the line felt like home. The Silver Herald did not appear, and that was right. A beam found the wall where the seam once glowed and showed only stone. Avery placed the journal on the rail and touched the cover with 2 fingers. Breath in, breath out. No thunder, no bargain. Just a quiet that could be trusted, he said. "I will see." The words did not need an answer. They stayed and kept watch. The light lowered. The room stayed whole. The journey folded into a single clear note that did not end when the sound ended. It simply lived.